Hiya! Welcome to this, my 33rd episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, and in this installment, titled Reporting Alternative Facts, I talk about Cylon Lucy Lawless and her Desinformatia campaign aboard Battlestar Galactica. The South Park guys give their take on the writer's strike from 2008. Shows in my current collection have stepped up considerably, and I love him, but Stephen Colbert just keeps on off-roading. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
First off, the reason I've made a relatively small amount of progress in my cataloging, particularly in my classic collection, I mentioned that I've been shifting everything over to a new computer since about December. That includes my music collection, which has only been growing and growing since I had cassettes in high school, then cassettes and CDs after college. I was not an early adopter, and finally MP3s, as well as songs I was able to rip in from CDs and even cassettes back in the aughts, all of which I can access to this day. All, that is, except for maybe about 200 songs altogether that I purchased from iTunes in the mid-aughts with an account linked to an email that I had through my cable provider for more than a decade when I was living and working in Minot, North Dakota. When we moved to Bismarck, there was at least 3 months we did not have cable, and in that time my Minot account lapsed and there was nothing to transfer it to. Unfortunately, the tower I had since 2006 finally bit the dust, and with it the last connection I had to those 200-some songs on that account. Well, I'd established a new iTunes account when I got my new laptop, probably in about 2013 or so, and all of the songs I transferred from my home rips and home transfers came in just fine, along with any new music I bought, which I did occasionally. But I noticed that my machine would not play songs that I bought on the old account. So I did what any sensible person would do. I tried the last few passwords I could remember, and when they quite naturally did not work, I set the whole mess to the back burner because I had tons of other songs and ultimately it was no big deal. Well, a year into this project where I have disconnected and reconnected multiple DVD dubbers multiple times to transfer media that I know here, talking to you, that I'll never watch again, burning 30 seconds of resampled audio-visual content from the sci-fi miniseries Tin Man to a new disc so as to cobble together a clean version of the content, which I'll almost certainly never look at again. Just for one example, you and I both know full well that I am not a person who would leave it at that. Well, last summer, I think more than a year ago, for sure before I started this podcast, I contacted Apple support, and the way we were able to do this was I yoked my defunct Minot email account to a shiny new email through Yahoo that I promptly misplaced, but the long and the short of it was that as of last summer, I had access once again to all of my music. Fast forward to now, and I no longer do. My new computer is authorized for my entire collection once again, except for the 200 or so songs I bought, while using the Minot account. I attempted to log in with a new yoked email, and I either wasn't doing it right, or that only reauthorized them to my now dead laptop. The thing is, my dead machine should still play the songs. So this past week I went through my music library to see which of my songs wouldn't play on the new PC. I wrote them down, and I may be able to convert and transfer them, or I may have to play and re-record them all in real time while my laptop sits directly on the AC to keep it from overheating. Or maybe some other option will reveal itself. I suppose I'll find out. Speaking of reveals, while pursuing this process, I've discovered some 150 songs that somewhere along the line went astray. So many songs in an unknown artist folder in iTunes with names like Track 01 and 01 Track 03 and so forth. I was intrigued. I clicked play on one of them. I think downloaded as part of a Christmas compilation at some point along the way, and I'm ever so keen to avoid copyright infringements. More on that in a bit. But I heard a contemporary electronica arrangement of what I suspect is one of the first Christmas songs ever written. Gaudite, Christus natus ex Maria Virgine, Gaudite, Christus natus ex Maria Virgine, Gaudite. Rejoice, rejoice, Christ is born of the Virgin Mary, rejoice. In tracking down the specific version I found in my collection, I pulled up several on YouTube, and I've got to say, this piece has been arranged beautifully by many artists. I eventually found one that sounded pretty close to the one I've got, so I got the information entered properly, and now if I'm looking for it, I can find it. No, I'm not starting a new podcast to figure out what all music I've got in my collection, because for one thing, I'd have to be impossibly vague about it to deflect all appearance or temptation of file sharing. Also, because I'm using an MP3 player these days, not an iTouch or any Apple product. I do still make the occasional purchase, but my iTunes these days is mainly a central storehouse for my music podcasts and music transfers, which may be a little gray legally, but I'm not sharing files, I'm just formatting them in a way I can listen to them for my own personal use, and as such, I should be able to avoid running afoul of the RIAA. For now, having reunited with them once, I have outlined a methodology for breaking my lost iTunes collection out of purgatory, and will slowly sort my mystery songs back into their proper folders. Speaking of copyright goons, this past week, Libsyn's The Feed podcast shared a report from a rando blogger podcaster who'd been pulling pics from Google Images and using them on their blog to illustrate this or that, and one day they were contacted by a company who'd taken 3 screen caps of copyright images on their blog and assessed a fine of $1,975. Naturally, the blogger podcaster was horrified. These images were all available online. Why target me? Well, he talked them down to $975, but that's still quite a lot for someone who's basically doing this as a hobby. I myself am willing to spend up to and including $0 for copyright violations, so this past week, that day in fact, the day I heard about this, I stripped the screenshots for crowdsourcing inquiries and actor-character compilations from my Facebook page. I'd love to have kept them. I think content producers ought to consider whether fan-shared images like this don't actually constitute promotion, but so long as we've got predatory, I'll charitably call them watchdogs, crawling the web in search of, I cannot sufficiently air quote how ironic I find the use of the term theft to be in this context, I will stay away from screen caps. And if I do encounter a scrap of video I need some help tracking down, I'll probably still risk posting it for crowdsourcing, but the longer I leave it up, the more likely it could get flagged, so probably just a month or so at a time. Hopefully before someone tries to charge me $2,000 for it. All of that out of the way, onto my Friday night feature.
Friday Night Feature.
In the second season of the Battlestar Galactica reboot on Sci-Fi, Lucy Lawless joined the cast as a journalist, Deanna Beers, cutting together some riveting footage of the military attacking civilian resistance aboard the cargo supply ship Gideon for the Fleet News Service. She's directing her staff to find additional footage of Marines going berserk, so she is instantly identifiable as a journalist more of the gonzo tabloid variety, where really, what's the ratings grab for a captive audience? When she is abruptly escorted to a meeting with Mary McDonnell as President Laura Roslin and Edward James Olmos as Commander Adama. They acknowledge her repeated requests for information and access regarding what she refers to as the Gideon Massacre and what they refer to as the Gideon Incident. She is given unfettered access to the crew with the directive that she tell the complete story of life aboard Galactica. She warns them the promise of access won't buy them a puff piece. President Roslin assures her they are not looking for one. They just want to get a story out about the lives of the crew and the pressures they're facing, and that they do it before the survivors all tear each other apart. So Beers and her team peek in at the crew quarters and see young soldiers being young soldiers. They also witness frustration and conflict between maintenance crews and pilots, the grueling and unrelenting schedules maintained by the flight crew, these conditions made all the more dangerous by the pilots taking stimulants and some destructive consequences. They film a crew member being taken to sickbay, where the camera spies unmasked Cylon Sharon, callsign Boomer, played by Grace Park, under a doctor's care for the duration of her apparent pregnancy with a human hybrid, and Adama demands Beers turn over the tape from that encounter, as this scandal would demoralize the survivors. Deanna is very sneaky, however, and only turns over a copy of that tape. After witnessing the crew's response during a Cylon attack, Deanna cuts together a story that shows life aboard the Galactica, humanity doing its best in terrible conditions, being heroic and brave in the face of terrifying odds. She points out that in all of this conflict, none of the crew is asked to resign, despite the lack of support or reinforcements. In fact, despite the heroic image of military flight crews marching to their stations as a janitor swabs the deck, whistling the theme song for the original series, which was a lovely callback. The tone of her summary, the wording of it, upon reflection, is a little bleak, a little demoralizing even, which realization takes on a darker aspect as the scene shifts to a view screen active on Cylon-occupied Caprica, where we see a group of humanoid Cylons, the four that the show has revealed thus far, viewing the same report we just saw broadcast throughout the fleet. They comment on it, amazed that it was broadcast, then view the suppressed footage where the doctor is caring for Boomer in her pregnancy. We see the number 6 in attendance is elated at this scene, as the camera shifts to view the 5th character in attendance. Number 3, Deanna Beers. It's not possible to unring a bell. It's not possible to experience the shock of this revelation twice. Not really. But the discovery that Deanna Beers is a Cylon is huge. Despite the fact that we have no history with this character beyond the episode we just watched, it was hardly on our radar. I mean, clearly she has been a member of the Fleet News Service for quite a while now, and she's built a level of trust with the viewers, with the fleet. She has manipulated the emotions of people now with her tabloid gossip and rumor stock in trade for potentially since before the fall of Caprica, which makes her especially insidious. She hasn't been part of the Cylon military coup against human society. Her attacks have been far more subtle, sowing discord and chaos, encouraging division, suspicions. Lord knows what she's reported before now regarding potential Cylon infiltration into the highest level of government, and part of why tensions are running so high, despite everyone pretty much recognizing that they're all in the same boat, or, well, the same fleet of ships anyway, and all pretty much dependent upon each other to get through a terrible, tenuous, and desperate situation. Shows like Battlestar Galactica are, say it out loud, incredible. They are rare. You just do not find this level of writing and direction supported by talent and resources all that often. And then you don't always get to experience them properly. A gritty, determined reimagining of a cheesy, sometimes ridiculous production dating from the 1970s. I know I wasn't giving it anything like a chance when it first came out. Rather, my awareness of the project grew bit by bit via friends whose opinions and judgment I knew to be sound, and I started coming around on, maybe I should start paying attention to this thing. Well, ahead of the 4th season, Sci-Fi leveled the killing blow, airing the first 3 seasons in an epic marathon that, among other things, convinced me that I had been wrong, so wrong, in not viewing this show before now. I was blown away by the intensity of the story, how compelling these people in this totally made-up universe became, the strength, drive, determination, and yes, sometimes how self-serving and not honorable these people were, secrets and lies and a palace intrigue that threw its dramatis personae into dark and impossible situations. I wondered sometimes if even the writers knew how they were going to get out of this, and oh wow, the twists and reveals. I mean, this show was fearless. And to draw one last parallel, when we're all on the same little wet rock here, all trying to get by best we can in the situation we find ourselves, all depending on one another for our continued survival, facing difficult odds, shortages, and disasters, we don't always agree on what the problems are, or for sure what the solution should be. But I think one thing we need to point to as being actively unhelpful are those voices in our media environment that sow seed of discord, mistrust, and violence, who seek to divide and destroy. We need to explore what motivates that priority, us versus them, this group over that group, and calling people illegals and scapegoating them for all of our nation's problems. Who benefits from that division, from the disruption, from the social destruction left in its wake? Because in the case of the U.S., it ain't space aliens. Even desinformatia campaigns from chat farms of Joe and Jane #1 Meretskayas sowing division, like just a casual scroll down my news feed, farmers are spraying their feeds with cancer, or getting vaccinated can make 14-year-old girls pregnant, or Republicans are evil, or Democrats are evil bad too, just walk away, stock photos, #.com, or it's Hillary's fault, or it's Bernie's fault, or everything's Trump's fault, gangs, criminals, illegal aliens, and there's like 4 Purge movies and a 10-episode series premiere coming up on USA. Just before we all walk out our front doors and just start killing each other like a Simon Pegg zombie movie, We honestly need to get a grip. Just a firm, tight grip on reality as we experience it versus the noise coming off the cable news outlets where they've absolutely got a commercial and ratings interest in getting us all worked up about everything. Just breathe. Just maybe think a little bit harder about our situation, about the connections we have to each other in communities and families and societies and nations. Explore those connections, prioritize compromise, and see if there's any way we can work together a little more and hate each other a little less. And I didn't need a show like Battlestar Galactica to cobble that little sermonette together, but wow, I feel like I encountered this episode at something like the perfect moment to share it.
Diving into the classic collection.
As it happens, Battlestar Galactica made up a huge chunk of my classic collection viewing. I knew it was coming. In the run-up to the 4th season premiere, Sci-Fi showed all the episodes of Battlestar Galactica, and like I said, in that very small amount of time, it went from being a show I'd never actually seen to one of my very favorite shows ever. As I discussed in my feature, it held to the strongest traditions of sci-fi. Explore the human condition from a reference of allegory. A nation divided, who can we trust, who's got our back, what's their motivation, what desperate measures are called for in response to injustice. Specifically tracking the storytelling of that moment, could terrorist acts ever be justified? Later in the series, there was a bombing coordinated by those we would consider the heroes in the piece. Was that an attempt to shift our point of view? These kinds of questions and scenarios rise within the better written science fiction to get us to examine our prejudices and responses. My life being what it is, I couldn't just kick back and watch a bunch of episodes of Battlestar Galactica, not to anything like the extent I would have liked to, but I'll for sure know where they all are now, and some future time when I'm able to watch more for enjoyment, I can revisit this wildly exciting, well-presented storytelling at my leisure. The one other not Battlestar entry in my classic VHS to DVD collection was an episode of South Park, which, I'll say it, I was approaching with exactly that attitude of, oh wow, seriously, what crazy, inappropriate shenanigans are these boys going to get up to in this episode? And for sure, the commentary flew in all directions. In the 12th season entry, Canada on Strike, rando Canadian Stephen Bootman addresses schools across the world about Canada Appreciation Day, but finds that Canada is not appreciated. Stephen is displeased and forms the World Canadian Bureau, somehow initialized WGA, which could remind us all of the Writers Guild of America. Actually, I think it might make sense using the Canadian alphabet. Let's all take a moment to remember how that goes. A, B, C, D, E, F, guy, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, buddy, Q, R, S, T, U, friend, W, X, N, Oh, it makes perfect sense. Anyway, the World Canada Bureau goes on strike and gets everyone in Canada to go on strike, and over the course of the next few weeks, what we see mostly is the strike not going so well, and when it ended, they didn't really get much of anything at all out of it, which is sort of what we're hearing from people, but publicly they put a brave face on it. Putting this up against how Joss Whedon and crew reported it in the commentary production from Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog, and lose we did, impressively, slunk back to our offices declaring victory. The reaction seems to indicate that the strike did not achieve its objectives. As Matt Stone and Trey Parker commented in the commentary for this episode, available on Hulu, the Canadians, just like the writers, ultimately got nothing, but tried to convince everyone that it was a big win, even have a victory party that no one seemed to be enjoying very much. But that was only part of the fun of this episode. Stephen Bootman was convinced that there was all of this money to be had from the internet. Here's where the boys were pulled in. Annoyed by endless reruns, Kyle calls in to Stephen and asks for new shows. Stephen misreads the situation as Kyle is going to give them money. Kyle said he doesn't have any. Stephen says, "What about all the internet money?" The boys consider this and craft the most viral video ever, a very confused Butters singing what in the butt, which millions of people see, and the boys go to the DMV to get their internet money. Well, there are lots of people waiting for internet money. Several viral phenomena from this time, including the chocolate rain guy, the Numa Numa guy, dramatic gopher, sneezing panda, and Chris Corker, who you might remember better as Leave Britney alone! Leave her alone! She's just a person! God, that is fun. Anyway, all the internet memes destroy each other, so the boys get the whole lump sum. 12 million theoretical dollars. Yep, internet fame is just fame at that point. It is not yet translated into money, leaving Kyle with his closing insight. I've learned something today. We thought we could make money on the internet, but while the internet is new and exciting for creative people, it hasn't matured as a distribution mechanism to the extent that one should trade real and immediate opportunities for income for the promise of future online revenue. It will be a few years before digital distribution of media on the internet can be monetized to an extent that necessitates content producers to forego their fair value in more traditional media. To which Stan responds, yeah. It's a downer, especially when the Canadians realize what Stephen and his buds... Oh, that was in this episode, too. I'm not your buddy, friend. I'm not your friend, pal. I'm not your pal, buddy, etc. Put them through, and for nothing, they set them adrift, presumably to Iceland. Thus it ran among cartoon Canadians and internet musicals. Looking at the bigger picture, as I discussed a few episodes back with my friend Nathan, from about 2005 onward, there were all sorts of really fantastic productions running on basic and premium cable, and by about 2008, I imagine there was a critical mass of writers who'd been supplying these markets and who were now looking for their piece of that action. I can certainly understand not feeling appreciated. I spent my entire professional life as a journalist feeling overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated, while being told repeatedly the money was just not there. In a right-to-work state, there's little recourse, and I guess it was kind of cool to see these writers, whose superior work was on grand display for all to see, seeking to claim their share. Again, as Joss and Co. performed, I'm proud I walked the line with writers, fans, and friends of mine, but now I wonder what it's finally all about. And years from now, I'll tell my tyke just what it feels like to strike out. Cool episode, gents.
Current collection.
I have seen and I have enjoyed so very, very much in the past couple of weeks. I wonder if I'll be able to do it all justice. My direct-to-DVD archiving includes so much of, first off, from my last entry, I've just got to say, all those lulls I was tracking laid in the foundation for some fantastic payoffs. In Preacher, the low-energy side quest, tracking Arseface and Hitler following their escape from hell and the heist of souls from a Japanese firm that extracts them from people for some not especially well-defined commercial interest, gave way to the preacher Jesse Custer confronting the Dark Pope Allfather at Grail headquarters. Jesse still has his superpower, the Genesis, the very voice of God, but he's not at full strength. Turns out Allfather has his soul hidden in a vial up his bum. Grail scientists have cloned many, many, many copies of the 17th incarnation of Christ's offspring, now a goofy, boundary-free, and completely out-of-hand idiot messiah, an inbred genetic grab bag of what the hell is that, whom they're hoping to infuse with the Genesis to bring about the apocalypse. Unfortunately, the Messiah as presented is actually too pure to house the voice of God, so Grail scientists have concocted spiritual blends of good and less good souls to give to Humperdinck. That's what Jesse has been calling the addlepated Messiahs, emphasis on the mess, and give them the necessary stability to hold it. Up till now, they've been transferring the Genesis to the Humperdinks, and they've been, well, exploding. Ultimately, they determine the right mix. This time the Humperdinck does not explode and speaks with the voice of God, bending all who hear it to his will, and the Grail researcher, her ears very sensibly covered, shoots the Humperdinck, and Genesis returns once again to Jesse. Having found the right mix, they want to bring in the not-clone Humperdinck, the Messiah, the 17th very inbred direct descendant of Christ, to infuse with concoction and grant him the voice of God, and thereby bring about the apocalypse. Jesse at this point does something very clever, which I will not spoil here because it is incredible, and ultimately allows him to reunite with his soul and use Genesis himself for the first time in quite a long time on this show. The things that happen next are cool, but a scene not to be missed is what happens with all the other clones they created. Talk about a traffic jam. Shift over to Better Call Saul, and we've got Kim Wexler confronting her former boss Howard Hamlin with rage at the firm's execution of Chuck's estate. All that fire, along with Jimmy's outrageous job search, the passion wouldn't have been out of place at a tent revival, not to mention the quiet but unmistakable assertion of authority by Gus Fring in the power struggle with the Salamakias. All of that more than made up for the low-energy fourth season premiere. Claws closed out its second season with a hurricane that knocked out the power at the hotel where Desna married Dr. Gregory, and then the fireworks of the honeymoon it lit early when both Gregory and Desna confronted each other about their murderous schemes, and then Zlata and the mother-in-law got involved. Several dramatic showdowns and shootouts later, along with some washroom canoodling between Roller and Desna, and Roller's confrontation with Uncle Daddy, Desna comes out imperially on top. Among the keys to the pill mill and possibly even the cocaine running operation, she has inherited a casino, the ultimate money laundering enterprise. It comes at quite a cost, however, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out when the series returns. In the second season of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, I got as far as the group's confrontation with the evil witch in the Magical Kingdom. The last 2 episodes are on my DVR waiting for me to get a chance to view them, which I eagerly anticipate. I finally got to watch the Scooby-Doo episode of Supernatural, which I've been waiting to see since March, but just as much fun as that was, I got to see a cast collaboration where the leads in the all-girls school musical episode of Supernatural helmed a delightful reimagination of Ray Parker Jr.'s song Ghostbusters, recreating hilarious scenes from the show, callback reshoots from the Season 5 fan favorite Changing Channels, and generally just so very much fan service. I'll include a link to their video in my show notes. Castiel answering the phone as Janine Melnitz is not to be missed. Oh, and in the interest of maybe saving you some time, I clicked back to watch the first Hollywood Supernatural parody, and I guess I'll say this about that. They got much, much better. Last weekend I spent a few hours bringing in what my mate Ralph likes to call my nerd shows. Nerd show! Last time I mentioned watching episodes of the Science Channel production of How the Universe Works. Last weekend I brought in more of these, along with something called Space's Deepest Secrets. The astrophysics were interesting, and the presentations mostly engaging and enjoyable. One episode was named one thing in my listing, but actually covered something else, so I didn't get the current insights on dark matter I'd been seeking, but while the computer-generated images were still repetitive and not especially inspired, at least the commentary improved somewhat. Along with a handful of relatively obscure physicists, we heard from the team leads on the Juno mission to Jupiter and the Cassini mission to Saturn, and at least one episode of one of them, they were kind of blending together for me towards the end, included comments from theoretical physicists Brian Greene and Michio Kaku, who are certainly well-known and well-received spokespeople on the topics. Oh, speaking of engaging, I wanted to mention this last time, but I was seriously running out of time. I kind of am this time too, but I'm going to cut short what I was going to say about the new season of We Bare Bears. To wit, you guys are adorbs, but creatively you're running on fumes. The story you absolutely need to tell is the one that happens at some point between the Yuri and Burrito and Panda 2 origin stories, and the one where they're all together in The Road. The story where they all meet, or better yet, the season where they all meet. If you guys plot out like 5 We Bare Bear installments where the baby bears meet up and become brothers, that will save you from having to lame out episodes like Money Man, where side character Chloe doesn't earn a scholarship and her science experiment is commandeered by the government, and Charlie-centric episode like El Oso, where the bears make no appearance whatsoever. Take the time, map that out, and you will have an absolutely fantastic season. These storylines have been off the mark. I mean, the Mom App episode could have been so much stronger, and oh wow, the limo? I mean, seriously, Panda gave Lucy dance lessons and bonded with her little brother. How does she not know he has feelings for her? Oh, I guess I talked about it anyway. We Bare Bears, be better. But yeah, okay, check this out. Tim Blaze channel on YouTube, Acapella Science. This guy absolutely rocks. He puts together solidly entertaining, written and researched science-based original pieces and parodies of popular songs. It looks like he loops and stitches his voice clips together on a tablet, and bam! You've got an Eminem-based insight into the development of nuclear energy, or a Bruno Mars-inspired insight into the New Horizons probe of dwarf planet Pluto, a Broadway-inspired conversation between Newton and Einstein defining gravity, or... and these were just down-to-the-floor brilliant, Ed Sheeran's exploration of atomic structure, and a Justin Bieber collaboration on the progress of evolution throughout history. There are others, I haven't seen all of them. He's pulled in Billy Joel to talk about entropic time, he's got pieces about nanobots and black holes and binomial nomenclature. I just bought his Nerd Manifesto and Higgs boson pieces on iTunes. Basically, if it's science, he's exploring it in the form of music parody. The talent involved in this work is mind-blowing, and I'm so happy to have stumbled across it. I'll look forward to seeing anything else he comes up with, and on the off chance that you might too, I'll include that link in my show notes as well. In The Sinner on USA, Detective Ambrose is homing in on the secret of the Mosswood Grove cult, but at the end of the last episode I saw, he may have gotten in a little deeper than he was expecting. And in lighter crime fare, the second season of Trial and Error, Lady Killer, closed out when Kristen Chenoweth as North Peck First Widow and social cause celebre Lavinia Peck Foster is tricked into confessing to, all the murders. She's convicted, but, gasp, escapes using her clever Ronnie Del Mundo disguise, while another season arc mystery is put to rest when Jayma Mays as Carol Ann Keene, spoiler alert, her baby turns out to be the love child of comatose Mayor Kevin Durand, and not of opposing counsel Josh Siegel, who, in a dramatic twist, cleverly disguised assistant Stephen Boyer as East Peck police officer Dwayne Reed, or rather his brother-cousin, as Lavinia's long-lost son, and trolled her from the witness stand, as conniving and clever as everything she did in pursuit of murdering every last witness against her. Brilliant. Season 3 cannot come fast enough. Apparently there will be witches. Oh, and I haven't forgotten that I want to make a disc set for this show, and now both seasons of it, but with the switch over from laptop to PC, I've lost some critical transfer software, so I need to puzzle out whether that's even still possible. If it is, awesome. If not, that's one more thing I need to rehab for my zombie laptop. I'll figure it out. In the meantime, I've got the episodes in a disc set already, just scattered across some 180 discs. Finally, Stephen Colbert, you little dickens, you thought you were going to get off the hook, but no, I haven't forgotten about you. After his little oopsie-daisy on the ubiquitous nature of credit card use in everyone's daily life, I'm watching his monologue in the wake of Omarosa's new book release, and no, I'm not surprised it's a bestseller. She's among the higher profile of the more recently terminated in this administration, and people are rightly interested in whatever insights might be available. Do not lie, Stephen, by my own catalog, I show you talking to her this past March after she got kicked out of the Big Brother house. So, when he pulls up a copy of her book to talk about it, he makes fun of it for being 30% off. Well, that's a marketing strategy, or at least I suspected it was a marketing strategy. I visited my local Barnes & Noble this past weekend, and the assistant did not want to comment on the record regarding corporate marketing strategies for some rando's media podcast, but she told me these decisions are made at the corporate level, basically when they anticipate a release is going to be an instant bestseller. I mean, she said, how could they know with a first-time author, but they'll release it at a discount, and what do you know? There she is, Unhinged, #1 atop the New York Times bestseller list. Seems to be working. And with that, thank you all so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes of this podcast at Apple Podcasts and iTunes at VideoFuzzy.libsyn.com, or search for me on Spotify under Terry J. Aman. Feedback is always appreciated, and you can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.